Rio de Janeiro, September 1972. The Santa Teresa neighborhood was gradually coming to life on that Monday morning. By 8 a.m., the heat was already intense, thick, humid, and clinging to the skin like a second layer, carried by the river's heavy air. Along the cobblestone streets, street vendors pushed their carts loaded with mangoes, guavas, and fresh green coconuts. Pigeons pecked and fluttered, fighting over scattered crumbs beneath the outdoor tables of the corner bakery on Almirante Alexandrino Street. Children sprinted down the steep alley that led to a small dirt square, where a warehouse with a metal roof stood with its wide doors open, ready to welcome the day ahead. The warehouse had no sign or name on its facade. It didn't need one. Everyone in Santa Teresa knew exactly what took place there from Monday through Saturday between 7 and 11 a.m. Its exposed brick walls were decorated with black and white photographs, while berimbaus hung neatly from thick sisal ropes. A faded banner stretched across one wall reading, Capoeira Angola, Tradition, Resistance, Honor. The polished cement floor carried the history of years of practice, marked by bare feet, controlled falls, and repeated movements refined into pure instinct. Outside, a yellow taxi strained as it climbed the steep street before stopping directly in front of the warehouse. The driver glanced out the window with a puzzled look, as though convinced the destination must be incorrect. The passenger paid the fare, stepped out slowly, and paused on the sidewalk for a few quiet moments. He studied the warehouse, read the banner, and listened to the rhythmic sound of a berimbau flowing from within. Then, without hesitation, he walked inside. Her name was Valdeta Santos Ferreira. She was 31 years old, stood 172 centimeters tall, and carried 74 kilograms of muscle forged through relentless training since the age of 7. She had grown up in the cultural Quilombo of São Juan del Rey, where capoeira was neither a sport nor a performance for tourists. It was survival encoded in movement, a martial language Africans concealed within dance so their masters would never realize they were preparing for combat. Valdete learned capoeira before she learned to read. Her teacher, Mestre Pajé, José Nascimento Filho, was 62 years old and had trained more than 300 capoeiristas over 4 decades. He often said she was the most complete student ever to pass through his school. That praise carried immense weight. Mestre Pajé was not a man who offered compliments lightly. At 20, Valdete won 3 consecutive regional capoeira challenges in Salvador, an achievement no woman had accomplished before. At 24, she represented Brazil in a cultural exhibition in Portugal, leaving an audience of 300 spellbound with a seamless sequence that blended the traditional ginga with chained sweeps, dropping 3 training partners in under 40 seconds. At 28, she moved to Rio de Janeiro and opened the Santa Teresa School using money she had spent 6 years saving. The warehouse became home to 62 regular students, including police officers, dock workers, university students, and 2 ballerinas from the municipal theater who trained every Tuesday and Thursday. Valdete never charged those who couldn't afford to pay, but she deliberately charged double to those who could. Her capoeira was pure Angola, the oldest, lowest, and most deceptive form. Capoeira Angola doesn't rise, it descends. The game unfolds close to the ground with bodies nearly horizontal, arms supporting fluid motion, and feet rotating at the level of an opponent's knees. To the untrained eye, it appears to be a dance. Those who have been swept off their feet by it know better. Her philosophy was straightforward and unwavering. The ground is capoeira's true domain. Any martial art that depends on distance and upright positioning loses its advantage the moment the game drops low. She had proven this time and again. By September 1972, Valdete Santos Ferreira had not lost a single challenge in 14 years of capoeira. She had faced 23 direct confrontations against capoeiristas from rival schools, judokas, and even an amateur boxer who underestimated a low sweep and found himself on the ground before realizing what had happened. 23 fights, no defeats. On that September morning, when the foreigner stepped through the warehouse gate, Valdete stood at the center of the space with her back to the entrance, instructing a group of beginners in the fundamentals of the ginga. She did not turn around immediately. In the corner, Mestre Page, seated and playing the berimbau, suddenly stopped. The silence itself was the signal. The man who entered was 1.72 meters tall and weighed 63 kilograms, about 140 pounds. He wore a short-sleeved white shirt, simple black trousers, and leather sandals. His black hair was neatly trimmed, his eyes slightly almond-shaped, and his posture completely relaxed. It was the kind of relaxed stance often mistaken for laziness, when in truth it revealed perfect efficiency, a body free of unnecessary tension. He paused at the center of the open entrance, observing the space with sincere curiosity. His eyes moved slowly across the berimbaus on the walls, the photographs, and the students who had stopped their training to watch him. He offered a subtle smile, not the kind meant to impress, but one that reflected genuine appreciation for something beautiful. One of the senior students, Rodrigo, 26 years old, a sculptor by profession and a capoeira practitioner by passion, stepped forward with a curious raised eyebrow. "Are you looking for someone?" he asked. The foreigner replied, first in English, then repeated himself in hesitant Portuguese, his accent blending Cantonese and American tones. "I heard the berimbau from downstairs. I wanted to take a look." Rodrigo glanced at the others. A ripple of laughter moved through the group of beginners. Just a tourist, they assumed. Someone who heard the music from the street and wandered in, treating Mestre Page's training hall like a scenic attraction. Valdete turned around. Her gaze moved over the foreigner with the precision of someone who had spent a lifetime assessing opponents. 63 kilograms. No visible muscle definition beneath the shirt. His stance seemed unusual, almost awkward, as if his feet were still deciding where to settle. "You can come in," she said calmly, "but take off your shoes." The foreigner looked down, noticed everyone was barefoot, and quietly removed his sandals. He stepped onto the polished cement floor and observed the space with the quiet curiosity of someone walking through a museum. From his corner, Mestre Page watched in silence. With more than 70 years of experience reading people, he noticed something unusual the moment the foreigner's feet touched the ground, how his weight distributed, how his toes adjusted naturally to the surface. It was not the posture of a tourist. Still, the old master said nothing. For about 20 minutes, the foreigner observed the training. He stood near the wall with his arms crossed, studying the ginga, the foundational movements, and the roda that Valdete later opened for the advanced students. When the berimbau signaled and two experienced capoeiristas began their game, he leaned forward slightly, a subtle detail unnoticed by everyone except Mestre Page. After the roda ended, Valdete approached, drying her hands with a towel. Her expression reflected someone who already understood what was about to unfold. "Where are you from?" she asked. "San Francisco," he replied. "Do you train anything?" There was a brief pause, just 2 seconds. "Something," he said. Then, "Yes." Rodrigo laughed openly, and a few students smiled. Valdete did not. "Do you want to try?" she asked. It wasn't an invitation. It was an assessment. The foreigner looked at the empty roda in the center, then at the berimbau in Mestre Page's hands, and finally back at Valdete. "Okay," he said. At that moment, Rodrigo voiced what everyone else was thinking. "She'll take you." "Down in 20 seconds, he said with an amused laugh, as if stating an obvious fact. Valdete didn't deny it. She simply stared at the foreigner with her usual composed and analytical expression. The foreigner looked at Rodrigo, then at Valdete. 20 seconds is a long time, he replied. No one could tell whether he agreed or completely disagreed. Have you ever been underestimated? Bruce Lee had many times. Yet he never hesitated, not because he believed himself invincible, but because he had prepared for such moments long before they arrived. If you've ever been underestimated and didn't know how to respond, the real issue was a lack of preparation. That's exactly what Bruce Lee's 5 secret rules are designed to teach. As a token of appreciation for our subscribers and the incredible success of our ebook, The Bruce Lee Secret Code, we're now offering a brand new ebook completely free, but only for a limited time. Simply click the link in the bio, enter your name and email, and receive Bruce Lee's 5 secret rules at no cost. Now let's return to the story. The road was open. Mestre Page began to play the berimbau in a slow Angola rhythm, a melody that sounded gentle yet concealed a trap within its cadence. 2 students clapped in rhythm at the sides. The sound filled the metal-roofed warehouse, and all conversations faded into silence. Valdete entered the road first. She began her jinga, the continuous flowing transfer of weight through hips and feet that, in Capoeira Angola, serves simultaneously as attack, defense, and observation. Her movement flowed as naturally as breathing. She had practiced it for 14 years. Every shift of weight and every pulse of power in her hips was pure automatism, forged through hundreds of thousands of repetitions. The foreigner entered next, and then came the first unexpected moment. He did not jinga. Instead, he stood completely still, feet slightly apart, knees gently bent, arms relaxed at his sides. No capoeira stance, no attempt at imitation. He simply watched Valdete with absolute focus, as though her moving body were the only thing that existed. Rodrigo scoffed. He doesn't even know how to move. Mestre Page paused his playing for half a second, then resumed. Valdete advanced with her first sequence, an AU, the characteristic lateral roll of Capoeira Angola. Low and fluid, almost crawling, it shifted her body sideways while positioning her leg for a sweeping arc aimed at destabilizing her opponent's base. It was elegant, swift, and extremely difficult to defend, especially for someone unfamiliar with capoeira. The attack came not from above like a conventional kick, but from the side and below, outside the visual habits of most fighters. Her foot passed just 10 centimeters from the foreigner's ankle. It missed. He had moved only 40 centimeters to the side. No retreat, no dramatic motion. Just a single, precise step taken at the exact instant her foot arrived, as if he had anticipated its trajectory before it even began. Valdete recovered in half a second and looked at him. For the first time, her expression shifted, subtly but unmistakably. A flicker of realization appeared in her eyes. She advanced again, this time executing the very sequence that had knocked out an amateur boxer 2 years earlier. A sway to the right to draw his attention. A sudden drop in level into a negativa, her body lowering almost to the ground, supported by one hand. From that position, she launched a meia lua de compasso, a powerful spinning kick traveling horizontally from below, targeting the knee or hip. Anyone unfamiliar with its mechanics would be unable to defend against it. The angle of attack was unique, virtually non-existent in other martial arts. The leg swept horizontally, skimming close to the ground in a perfect 180-degree arc. The foreigner noticed her descent, stepped back with precision, and as the half-moon kick emerged, he bent his torso backward at an angle that seemed physically impossible for someone of his build. Her foot passed just 5 centimeters beneath his chin. Silence engulfed the warehouse. Mestre Page stopped playing the berimbau. Valdete rose slowly from the floor and fixed her gaze on the stranger. For the first time in 14 years of capoeira, Valdete Santos Ferreira experienced something she couldn't immediately define, something she would later describe as the sensation of the ground vanishing beneath her feet. It wasn't fear. It was recognition. Over the next 2.5 minutes, every second was etched permanently into the memory of the 17 people present in that shed. What unfolded was something the Santa Teresa capoeira community had never witnessed. Even Mestre Page, with 72 years of martial arts experience, had seen something comparable only once before, long ago in a story he rarely shared, and whose truth remained uncertain. Valdete attacked with complete commitment. It wasn't reckless nor driven by anger. It was pure professionalism, the calculated decision of a seasoned fighter who understood that this unknown opponent demanded her absolute best from the very beginning. She launched into the full sequence reserved for her most serious challenges. A pure Angola jinga to establish rhythm, a low negativa to draw the opponent's gaze downward, a heel sweep targeting the supporting leg, and an immediate transition into an armada por cima, a high spinning kick, should the opponent attempt to escape upward. It was a seamless chain of 4 movements, striking simultaneously at low and high levels, leaving virtually no room for escape, unless one fully understood the intricate grammar of Capoeira Angola. But the foreigner wasn't using the grammar of any known martial art. He didn't block. He didn't leap. He didn't retreat in straight lines. For every movement Valdate executed, he responded with something entirely unconventional, evasions that resembled neither kung fu, jiu-jitsu, nor boxing. His reactions were defined by absolute efficiency, the smallest possible movement at the precise moment required, placing him just beyond reach, without wasting even a millimeter of energy. He wasn't merely watching Valdate's movements. He was reading her entire body, her feet, hips, shoulders, and neck. Advanced capoeira practitioners understand that, in Capoeira Angola, the next movement is already embedded within the current one. A descent into negativa reveals the direction of the coming sweep. Those fluent in this language can respond before the attack even unfolds. The foreigner was reading that language in real time, during his very first exposure to it. Rodrigo fell silent. The students seemed to forget how to breathe. Valdate's sequence reached its final movement, the armada por cima, a high spinning kick designed to eliminate any escape from the low sweep. Powered by the full rotation of her 74-kilogram frame, the kick arced toward his temple with decisive force. What happened next defied explanation. Instead of retreating, the foreigner advanced. In less than half a step, he closed the distance, from 2 meters to just 30 centimeters, entering the kick's radius. Valdate's leg cut through empty space, like a sword slicing air without a target. And suddenly, he was inside, only 30 centimeters away. His face was level with her shoulder. His hands were open, one positioned near her elbow, the other near her wrist. Not gripping, not restraining, merely placed with quiet precision. She couldn't move. Her capoeira had no space to exist. The distance it required had vanished. They remained frozen in that position for perhaps 3 seconds. 3 seconds during which everyone in the warehouse held their breath. Then he stepped back. He reopened the space, returned to his original spot, and stood calmly, still relaxed, arms loose, watching her. Mestre Paget had stopped playing 40 seconds earlier. No one had asked him to. He had stopped because the berimbau's sound was interfering with something that needed to be heard in silence. Valdate stared at the stranger for a long moment. "Who taught you that?" she asked. He paused thoughtfully. "Water," he replied. "If you've made it this far, you already understand that this story doesn't end in defeat. Leave a like now. It helps the channel continue sharing stories like this. And stay with us, because what happens next transforms everything you've seen so far into something entirely unexpected. What followed lasted another 2 hours. Valdate instructed the students to continue their training and sat with the foreigner at a wooden table in the corner of the warehouse where a bottle of water and 2 glasses were always kept. Mestre Paget approached slowly, he never rushed, and took a seat across from them. The foreigner introduced himself, Bruce Lee. He was 31 years old, born in San Francisco, raised in Hong Kong, and living in Los Angeles. He was an actor and filmmaker, but, more importantly, as Valdate gradually absorbed, he was the creator of a martial arts philosophy he had been developing for 12 years. It was built on a principle Capoeira Angola had embodied for centuries. Movement should respond to movement, not follow rigid, predetermined forms. Bruce Lee had not arrived at the warehouse by chance. He was in Rio de Janeiro for meetings regarding the South American distribution of Fast and Fury, a film that had been released in Hong Kong earlier that year with unexpected and overwhelming success. With 3 free days before his return flight, he asked a local producer from Rio, Marcos Ventura, to recommend a place where he could witness authentic Brazilian martial arts, far removed from tourist performances. Marcos gave him the address of the warehouse. "Why did you step in when you had no idea what might happen?" Valdate asked. Bruce reflected for a moment before answering. I always step in when I don't know what's going to happen. That's the only time real learning takes place. Valdette turned her gaze toward Mestre Page. The old master wore a familiar expression, one she had seen many times before. It was the look of someone silently agreeing with a truth they had never verbalized, yet had always understood. According to Rodrigo, who recounted the moment years later, the conversation that followed was the most profound and intense discussion on martial arts ever held in that warehouse, and it had witnessed many remarkable exchanges. Bruce asked about the negativa, eager to understand the mechanics that allowed the body to descend so low without sacrificing mobility. Valdette demonstrated the movement. Bruce observed carefully 3 times before attempting it himself. By the 4th attempt, he performed it reasonably well. By the 10th, he executed it with impressive precision. Rodrigo later described the moment as the most unsettling thing he had witnessed in 3 decades of capoeira. A foreigner grasping the core movement of Capoeira Angola after just 40 minutes of observation and experimentation, without technical terminology or formal instruction. Valdette then asked about the maneuver he had used, stepping into the kick's radius and closing distance instead of retreating. In Capoeira Angola, a similar principle existed, known as corpo fechado, the idea that sometimes the only escape from danger is to move directly toward it rather than away. Yet Bruce's execution was distinct, more efficient, stripped of any unnecessary motion. "You have no form," she said. It was not criticism, but a precise observation. "I have all the forms," Bruce replied calmly. "That's why I don't need any one of them." Mestre Page, who had remained silent for over an hour, finally spoke. His Portuguese carried the deep, rural accent of Minas Gerais. "It's what we call fair play. When you have nothing to hide, the body becomes honest." Bruce looked at him thoughtfully for several seconds before responding in English, unable to find the exact equivalent in Portuguese. "That's it. That's exactly it." Before leaving, Bruce asked to witness a complete Capoeira Angola roda, featuring berimbau, caxexi, pandero, and atabaque, performed by the most skilled students without interruption. Valdette agreed and opened the road. Mestre Page played continuously for 40 minutes. Throughout the entire performance, Bruce stood quietly in the corner of the warehouse, maintaining the same intense focus that had unsettled everyone earlier that morning. He took no notes, captured no photographs, he simply observed. When it ended, he approached Valdette and said something she would repeat in interviews, classes, and conversations with students for the next 30 years. "You discovered the same thing I did, just through a different path." It took Valdette 2 full days to grasp the depth of his words. When she finally did, she sought out Mestre Page. The old master simply nodded and said, "I know. I saw it the moment he stepped on the ground." Valdette Santos Ferreira continued, teaching Capoeira Angola in Santa Teresa for another 28 years until 2000, when the building was expropriated for an urban development project that was never completed. Over her career, she trained more than 400 students and never lost a single challenge. In 1987, during an interview with a martial arts magazine published in São Paulo, she was asked about the most important moment of her career. The interviewer expected her to mention a championship, a decisive victory, or a prestigious title. Instead, she replied, "A morning in September 1972, when a 63-kilogram man taught me that I didn't know everything about the ground." The journalist asked what, specifically, she had learned. She paused thoughtfully before answering, "I learned that when you fully dominate a territory, you stop seeing what exists beyond it. And what lies beyond, that's where the real game unfolds." The journalist then asked whether she had won the confrontation. "There was no confrontation," she replied. "There was a conversation. I just didn't realize it when it began." To truly understand what happened in that warehouse, not merely as a compelling story but as a profound principle, it's essential to understand what Bruce Lee had developed in the years leading up to that September morning. The system Bruce called Jeet Kune Do was not a martial art in the conventional sense. Traditional martial arts, such as various styles of kung fu, karate, judo, and boxing, are structured around forms. Practitioners master a defined vocabulary of movements through repetition until those movements become instinctive. The intelligence of the system resides within its forms. Mastering them means mastering the system. However, Bruce identified a critical limitation in his early 20s. Forms can also become prisons. Karate excels at linear strikes and high blocks. Judo dominates through balance and leverage. Capoeira thrives with low attacks and unpredictable angles. Each system is exceptional within its own framework and vulnerable outside of it. Bruce devoted 12 years to developing a system free from fixed vocabulary. He described it as the honest expression of the individual, movement shaped directly by the moment, unfiltered by rigid form. To achieve this, he studied extensively: Western boxing, European fencing, Greco-Roman wrestling, American freestyle, wrestling, and Thai kickboxing. He filmed techniques and analyzed them in slow motion, measured angles, calculated force vectors, and even consulted physicists about biomechanics. Through this deep exploration, he realized that Capoeira Angola had arrived at similar principles centuries earlier, born from entirely different historical circumstances. Capoeira Angola emerged in Brazil between the 15th and 17th centuries, developed by enslaved Africans who needed to train for combat without alerting their captors. Their solution was ingenious. Disguise martial training as dance. Attacks appeared as dance movements. Defenses resembled playful gestures. The entire system was built on ambiguity, where every motion could be a strike, an evasion, or a trap. You could never be certain what was coming next. Capoeira Angola does not follow a rigid or fixed structure. Instead, it embodies a form designed to appear formless. That is precisely why Mestre Pare stopped playing the berimbau the moment he saw Bruce step onto the floor. He instantly recognized the principle. Two vastly different journeys, one rooted in Taoist philosophy emphasizing emptiness and adaptability, and the other born from the survival instincts of enslaved Africans in colonial Brazil, had ultimately converged at the same profound truth. The greatest freedom in any confrontation lies in having no predictable form for an opponent to anticipate. Water, Bruce had said that morning when Valdete asked who had taught him. Water has no shape of its own. It takes the shape of whatever contains it. Pour it into a glass, and it becomes the glass. Pour it into a bottle, and it becomes the bottle. Place it in a boxing ring, and it becomes boxing. Place it within capoeira, and it becomes capoeira. Water cannot be trapped because it possesses no fixed form to confine. Capoeira Angola arrived at this truth through the necessity of surviving oppression. Bruce arrived at the same realization through 12 years of disciplined and analytical study of combat biomechanics. Valdete had spent 14 years mastering her domain, becoming unmatched within her territory. Yet, on that September morning, a 63-kilogram man stepped into her space and made that territory dissolve, not through superior strength, nor by using capoeira's own technical vocabulary, but through the complete absence of a fixed style. This was not a defeat. It was a revelation, a living demonstration of principle. There is one final part of this story worth telling. That very afternoon, Bruce returned to his hotel in Leblon, the Miramar Hotel on Avenida Atlantica. In the black-covered notebook he always carried, now preserved in the Bruce Lee Foundation archives in Los Angeles, there is an entry dated simply September 1972, without a specific day. It contains 4 lines in English, later translated and published in 1975 after his death. The translated passage reads, Rio de Janeiro, Capoeira Angola. I found my footing today. The ground is where everything begins and where everything ends. I had to come to Brazil to witness what I already knew. Beneath it, written in larger letters, was a sentence never explained in any other note. Valdete knows. The old man knows too. They arrived there first. Mestre Pare passed away in 1989 at the age of 81, still playing the berimbau on Monday mornings until his final years. His students often recalled that when asked about the most unusual moment of his life, he always gave the same answer: a morning when a slender man entered the warehouse, calmly removed his sandals and stepped onto the capoeira floor as if he already understood what awaited him. I saw it in his feet, the old master would say. Feet recognize the ground. They are never in a hurry, and his feet were not in a hurry at all. Valdete continued teaching Capoeira Angola until the year 2000. Afterward, she spent 12 more years delivering lectures at universities, presenting Capoeira Angola as cultural resistance, a philosophy expressed through movement, and a survival. Technology preserved across 3 centuries of history. In nearly every lecture, she recounted that September morning in 1972, always concluding with the same words, recorded by a student during a 2009 lecture at the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, UFRJ, and later shared widely among capoeira communities across Brazil. He didn't teach me anything I didn't already know. He showed me that I didn't realize how much I already knew. What happened that morning in Santa Teresa transcends martial arts. It goes beyond the meeting of 2 fighting styles, 2 nations, or 2 traditions. Inside that metal-roofed warehouse, filled with the scent of cement and the sound of the berimbau, 17 silent witnesses observed a circle that transformed into something greater, a dialogue. Such moments are rare in life, encountering someone who has reached the same truth, through an entirely different path. When that happens, there is no victory and no defeat, only recognition. Valdete devoted her life to achieving mastery within a defined territory. Bruce dedicated his life to mastering movement beyond all territories. When they met, what endured was not a measure of superiority, but the realization that 2 distinct journeys toward truth had arrived at the same destination. The most perfect movement is the one that reveals nothing before it happens. Capoeira Angola teaches, deceive to survive. Bruce Lee taught, be water. Water deceives because it has no form to anticipate. The language differed, but the truth was identical. If this story has changed the way you see Bruce Lee, imagine what you'll discover by going even deeper. In the video description, you'll find our best-selling ebook, praised by readers worldwide. It reveals Bruce Lee's secret code, his authentic philosophies, training methods, nutrition strategies, and mental discipline that shaped his legendary status. Use the coupon code JIRLEGEND20 to receive your exclusive subscriber discount. And if you're a fan or collector, be sure to explore our exclusive merchandise in the description, unique items you won't find anywhere else. If this video was worth your time, leave a like, comment truth, so I know you stayed until the end, and subscribe to the channel. There's much more about the dragon coming your way. Until the next video.